Let's start with the MVAC football previews on Running Point, brought to you by Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown. Let's start with the Crestview Rebels, the team coming back that I think is going to have the biggest target because they won it last year, of course.
Yeah, Crestview did win it all last year. There were some players that they lost, though, and a whole slew of players that aren't going to be returning to Crestview. But Crestview was seventh in the area in offense last year, so they were definitely one of the higher scoring teams, but only two returning starters from that last year's team. Let's go real quickly through the list of players that were lost. Wyatt Babick, Kyle Saunders, Ethan Powell, William Hardenbrook, Anthony Briarly, Tony Perorzia, Brandon Yassins, Caden Paskovich, Cole Kirchhofer, and Kane McIntosh are all players that were off of the Crestview's team this year. But players to watch: Anthony Kusick, senior, 15 passing touchdowns last year. Anthony, that was most in the division. Talked about it a little bit before the show today. He's definitely going to be a player to watch for Crestview as far as offense is concerned.
Yeah, I mean, when you return your running quarterback, and Kusick is a great one, 15 touchdowns, like you said. Then you at least have your lighthouse back. Your guiding light to the rest of the offense, and you can build around him with some young talent. One thing you always know about Crestview is they are going to be fast because their track and field program always very strong. They always have fast, athletic kids, and now that they have turf and they're going into their second year of a turf field, utilizing that speed is going to be really important for the Rebels.
Absolutely. Another big one, Jack Yerke, a wide receiver, senior wide receiver for them. That's good. Looks to be that number one target for Kusick going forward this year as well.
He's a big boy too. They're going to probably use him a little bit as a tight end and a receiver to kind of help with a little bit of run blocking and stuff. But man, we saw how good he developed as a rebounder in basketball season when thrown into the opportunity. Now he's being thrown into the number one target for Crestview's offense. And we couldn't be more positive that he's going to make a big impact for that offense because we've already seen that he's got the ability to shine when thrown into an opportunity. So big things from Yerke, especially on that offensive side.
Yeah, and with the losses of Hardenbrook and Powell, who are mostly took most of the snaps running back wise, I think, for Crestview last year, the one guy you're going to kind of be looking at now going forward, I think, is Roslyn. I think Butera is what we're looking at. Junior for Crestview. He's going to be running back. I think he's going to be looking to get a lot more snaps going into this season, a lot more starting time. They're going to be hanging their hats on him a little bit more, and he's going to need to come up big out of the backfield. And I think they got the perfect guy to step up in that position, though.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. He's fast like everyone else on Crestview, but he's also a tough kid. You can put him up the middle, and he can turn 1 or 2 yard runs into 3 or 4 or 5 yard runs, always falling forward, very good with his low center of gravity and the ability to keep his pads low. So he's going to be an asset to Crestview's run game, though. The question mark is going to be the skill position players on the outside that they lost. No more Brandon Yansons, no more jet sweeps. They get the defense running from sideline to sideline. So the question is who they're going to use to kind of spread out that defense with the speed and make linebackers run from one end to the other.
Talking about that defense, Batura is also on linebacker position too for them, and he's also very good at linebacker. So you're going to see him play both ways, and I think you're going to see impactful minutes. Talking about that Crestview defense was one of, if not the best defenses in the area, I think, last year, holding opponents to under 13 a game. But like you said, Anthony, Crestview, last year's team was a juggernaut. They lost a lot on offense. They also lost a lot on defense. I believe only 3 starters are returning. Some of those losses, we talked about Wyatt Babick. He also played defensive line. Anthony Briarly, also a defensive lineman. Hardenbrook was a linebacker. McIntosh was a linebacker. Paskovich was a defensive back. I mean, basically everyone we said played both positions. Yassins was a defensive back. Anthony Sebastian, defensive lineman. These guys played both ways, and you're losing these guys, not on just offense, on defense. So when you lose that one guy, it's like losing 2 players in one. There's a lot of holes to fill, but there's a lot of young, fresh talent in Crestview to fill them.
One thing I liked about Crestview last year, and I would be hard pressed to believe it'll happen again. They lost the first game of the year to Champion in a monsoon. The rest of the season, even when the playoffs started, it looked like they were still angry about week one. Like they held on to that grudge a little bit, and they were always playing with attitude, that chip on their shoulder. And maybe that'll carry over into 2021, where they're just playing constantly with this attitude and chip on their shoulder and almost an angry man mentality coming with the Crestview Rebels, and they'll hit harder, and they'll just run a little bit faster than everybody else.
And another player, like I said, I circled him on both offense and defense, Anthony, and I'm going to circle him again is Batera. He plays both sides of the ball, and we talked about what he's going to be doing running back wise. I think he's going to take a big jump. He's going to get more snaps, but we already know what he's going to do on defense. Had half a dozen sacks last year. I think he had over 100 tackles, I believe, too, last year as well. And I mean, in the season, we know it went into the playoffs, stretched into the playoffs, though. But I mean, 100 plus tackles last year. I think a half dozen sacks. He's doing something pretty well, and he's a good guy to anchor your defense on, a solid linebacker that's going to not only get to the quarterback, but really keep the run game in check too, in that second line of defense.
That'll be oh so important, because you might expect Crestview's offense to maybe take a couple of steps back and not score as much as they did last year. So they're going to lean on that defense to keep holding people down a little bit.
Absolutely. Looking at Crestview's schedule now, going through it, August 19th, home versus Salem, 27th at Southern, September 3rd at United, September 10th at Campbell Memorial, 17th home versus Liberty, 24th home versus Brookfield, October 1st at LeBray, October 8th at Garrettsville Garfield, 15th home versus Champion, and 22nd closing it out at Newton Falls. Looking at this schedule, I mean, obviously they play a lot within the gray tier, but some tough competition outside of the gray tier of the MVAC.
You start with non-conference. I circle that Salem game to kick off the season. Salem, Crestview, real close to each other, both in Columbiana County, right down the road. It's going to be a big rivalry, and we're going to see, Crestview play up a division. I think Salem's Division 4, and lock heads with the Quakers. I think that's going to be a really big week one matchup, and we're going to see how it plays out at Crestview, by the way, too.
Games I'm interested in too. The September 3rd game, I circled that one at United. I'm interested in seeing that matchup between these two teams, because I'm curious, because Crestview might be taking a step back, United might be taking a step up. It might be a good matchup. We'll see though as chips play forward. But the real matchups I'm really excited for, and I think are going to have big implications on this gray tier division. September 24th, home versus Brookfield, October 1st at LeBray. These are the two teams that came right underneath you, and they're pretty damn good scoring offenses as well.
But then you also have to be looking at that Garfield game. And
I mean, it's a stretch of 3 games that could make or break your season in the division.
New kids on the block, but everyone knows that Garfield has been a very productive, very, very good football program. And Crestview beat them last year in the playoffs.
And I mean,
you got to think
at LeBray and at Garfield in back-to-back games too. It's not going to be an easy end of the year. Very backloaded schedule. It looks like Crestview went with this year, because Newton Falls, again, not going to be a slouch or a pushover as well. Champion, we all know how good they can be as well. So I mean, you go LeBray, Brookfield, LeBray, Garrettsville, Garfield, Champion, and Newton Falls in your back half of your schedule. Definitely work that's going to need to be done, but at the same time, could be gearing themselves up, getting ready for playoffs right at the perfect time.
And that Champion game is going to be a game that everyone on that team circles, because, of course, Champion beat them in week 1 last year, and they want to wash that bad taste out of their mouth. They're not used to losing in the conference at Crestview. So they're going to be eyeing that Champion game. I think LeBray is going to be a very fun match, because LeBray is going to have such a good explosive offense returning, and we're going to talk about them a little bit later. But LeBray is going to be a very, very interesting matchup, because, like I said, Crestview's defense going to have to step up a lot this year, and that might be the best offense they go up against.
Yeah, and I mean, you hope to have everything ironed out in the first 5 games of the season. Not that they're going to be pushover games, but it's definitely going to be a little bit lighter than your last half of the season. So you want to make sure you're right. Hopefully no injuries for the Rebels by this point, because they're going to have to go through a 5-game gauntlet before the playoffs start.
Yeah, and playoffs, Division 5 for Crestview. You look at that region; it's a tough region, and a 4-6 record might not cut it.
And there's a lot of Division 5 teams in the area that we represent too, that we've talked about too, Anthony, that are very talented as well. And it's gonna be you're gonna have to do some work to get into Division 5 playoffs this year. That's for sure.
I don't see that division being even with 16 teams. I don't see it being one where a team below 500 or a team maybe 4-6, maybe, but you're going to be really sweating on week 10.
Yeah, I'd say I would just take the jump and say you're going to need at least a 5-5 record if you're in Division 5 this year to make the playoffs, or at least be in contention for the playoffs. I don't know if a losing record's going to do it this year or not. You might be right, and you might be able to sneak in if some teams get some upsets later in the season. But I really think you're going to need a 5-5 record, and it's going to be beautiful because we have so many Division 5 teams that are going to be beating up on each other too.
That Salem game is going to be important because that's playing up a division. And then Southern and United are both down divisions. Southern's Division 7 and United's Division 6. Not saying anything that's bad, but that's not going to give you computer points if you win those games. Not going to give you as many computer points as the Salem win if you were able to knock off the Quakers. So,
yeah.
in the grand scheme of things, that Quakers game is going to be very important, especially if Crestview comes down to the wire and is sweating on week 10 on whether or not they're going to make the playoffs.
Now, not making predictions, though. This is just a simple hypothetical if scenario. If Crestview is able to go out, knock off Salem in that first game of the season, and they finish the next 4 series 2-2, and they go into the next half of the season 3-2, looking at Brookfield, LeBray, Garrettsville, Garfin, Champion, and Newton Falls, needing, you would think, at least 2 to 3 wins out of that. But for me, at least, looking at that 5 schedule, I'd rather try to get 2 wins out of those 5 games than 3, because it's going to be a lot of work to be done. And those first 3 games aren't going to be easy, too. Campbell, Memorial, and Liberty, you would think are going to tend to favor in Crestview, but we don't know, because these are 2 teams that are going to be taking a step forward.
They're definitely on the upswing. Both teams young and talented last year. And when, like we said it before, and a lot of teams we've already previewed, young and talented that went through growing pains equals dangerous the next year. And they definitely went through their growing pains, but that means that they're going to be dangerous this year.
Absolutely.
So you can't sleep on Campbell or Liberty.